What's up, guys? This is Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the broader markets. I want to break down what's happening with the economic calendar moving forward, as we have some data coming out for tomorrow and other things that could be affecting the way the market's going to be moving. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link that's down below. Use my QR code right over here to sign up. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100, you're going to get $20 of free Nvidia stock. If you deposit $2,000 or more, you're going to get $50 worth of Nvidia plus $100. Deposits $10,000 or more to get $300 worth of Nvidia for free plus $100, or deposits $50,000 to get $1,000 of free Nvidia stock plus $100. You're also going to qualify for an 8.1% APY on invested cash. The offer ends very soon, so please use my link down below to sign up. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the market. So I want to mention that if you look at the daily time frame on SPY, we got this rejection off that 672 area. And right now the chart does favor there might be some kind of like small downside move. Of course, when you really zoom out, you guys can see that this trend is still bullish. Even if we do come down just a bit and maybe retest this resistance becoming support at 667, which is the previous all-time high, or if we come a little bit lower towards that 665 area, right, we could still bounce again and continue to push. But for now, there might be some kind of like downside move. We have like a slight bearish divergence and a daily topping candle. But just keep in mind that there's been lots of times when SPY dipped early on during the week, only to bounce by the end of the week. If you go back the last couple of weeks, that is what's been happening for quite some time. When September started, it was Tuesday. The market dipped, it gapped down and dumped on Tuesday, September 2nd. And then we started to rally heading into Friday, right? We started to push more for the next week. Then, if you look at what happened by mid September, from Tuesday through Wednesday, we saw the market actually dump by September 17th. We dumped quite a bit. I think this was during FOMC day. Then we just rallied for the rest of the week. If we go to what happened, I think about 2 weeks ago, right? We had Monday. The market was at 667 going into Tuesday. Then we dumped heading into Thursday. But then by Friday, we started this recovery move and we continued to push. So there are lots of times when we get close to like Monday/Tuesday when the market kind of dips a little bit, but then we start to rally by Thursday and Friday. That's typically what's been happening ever since the month of September started. And now heading into October, there's a very, very good chance the trend is going to continue. That makes me believe there is a good chance that we come down a bit more. We might be retesting 665, and then we'll see if we bounce from there. I'll talk about why I think 665 could be coming in just a second. Let's first go over the data just real quick. So tomorrow is going to be Monday, October 6th, 2025. At 11:30 a.m., we have the 3 and 6 month bill auctions, and that's pretty much it for data. We're not expecting as much data due to the government shutdown. Some of the data may be delayed. Some data points may not even come out. It all depends what happens with the government shutdown, what progress is made, and if it can once again be ended by funding the government through a bill or agreement that passes. But as of right now, we don't really have that. On Tuesday, we have Myron giving a speech and Kashkari, and we have other factors as well. And then don't forget that for Wednesday, October 8th, we have the FOMC minutes, which I believe will still be coming out despite the shutdown. So the Fed is still going to be functioning. So be ready for all of this. There might be some volatility coming there might be volatility coming as a result of all of this. Some of this data, at least later on during the week. Now, earnings, I think this is going to be one of the last quiet earnings weeks. There's not really much coming out this week. It's going to be very, very quiet. But by next week, I think the big bank earnings will be starting. So get ready for that. Other than that, our data is still suggesting, when you look at like the private sector, that there is a weakening labor market, which is incentivizing the Fed to cut more. Of course, the inflationary data is going to be another factor affecting us, but as of right now, there's not really enough data to see things. The latest pieces of inflationary data were not too bad, and that is a more positive sign for the Fed, which is why the market's pricing in 94.6% chance we get a cut in October now, which is very, very likely. So, what is my prediction? Why do I think 665 might be tested on SPY? We'll go over the bullish and bearish cases, and I'll talk about what's going to likely happen. So, if you're a big bull, okay, if you want to be really bullish, first you want to see SPY kind of break past that 672 area. If we break this, we're looking for new all-time highs. But if you're a bear, there's two things to remember. Number one, we have support right here at 667. This is going to be our 20 EMA. That's the green line you see right here. If we lose this, I'm going to be eyeing this like curling 50 EMA, the yellow line. So I think that as the days progress, this yellow line is going to be kind of turning towards that like 665 area, and this might kind of intersect with the chart right over here. So the yellow line, our 50 EMA, should be trending towards 665, and we're going to be watching to see if this is kind of like a head and shoulders. There's like a left shoulder possibility ahead. Tomorrow there should be some kind of bounce for like 670 coming, and then we're going to see if we get a rejection. Do we break this high and be bullish? If we break 672, we're bullish. But if we come short, if we just hit like 670 and reject, then I think we're going to be dipping to at least 665 for like a head and shoulders. And then we could kind of like bounce right off that by the end of the week. So that is what could be coming, at least for the SPY chart, right? Based off different factors such as the 50 EMA that's kind of curling here, which is going to be acting as a magnet in case we lose support. The second factor is the daily time frame has rejection on SPY. The third factor you could look at is going to be like the VIX, which actually has a flag forming. The daily is looking a bit more bullish, and the 4 hour could be forming, sorry, the 4 hour could be forming a flag right over here. And then, if this dips a bit, it could kind of break out a little bit, and that could be a sign the market might see some temporary downside. So we'll see about that. And then, the other factors could also be because of the fact that we just rallied super hard without much of a dip. We do like to kind of cool off a bit before continuing to go higher. That's what SPY has been doing. There's lots of pairs where we cool off and bounce, cool off and bounce, cool off and bounce. So we could be looking for that all over again. So what's my prediction for tomorrow, right? You have to know the bullish and bearish cases. If you're trading this, you want to see us break 672 to really continue. But I think there's going to be a big test. And in the morning, we're going to try to retest 670. I think there might be another retest around that 670 zone. But we need to get back above 672 to remain bullish. If you're trying to trade this, you could set a stop near 672. But always remember that if you're willing to risk more, what you could do is kind of like hold the trade out for or like choose a strike that's like a little bit further out. It's like don't just place Joe DTEs because once again it's more risky. That way you could set a stop right here in case you are trying to short this. And then if we get a rejection, then we're looking for this like a left shoulder, head and right shoulder, and then that could signify some kind of pullback move that could be coming. And I think that that's the most likely possibility. A slight pullback back down towards 665 might be forming a right shoulder tomorrow, a little bit of a bounce, maybe a bit of a dip, but it's going to be very temporary. Once again, we could still bounce off our 50 EMA all over again. Another reason why you could think this is because of the QQQ and tech, which is starting to show some weakness. When you look at the QQQ, we have support at 602.3. If that fails us, we're dipping to 600 and 598. If we're bullish, we need to break and hold 607. And we actually have two tops here, and we're starting to reject off this. So that's another sign. I would not be surprised if we bounce a little bit tomorrow. We could retest 605 and kind of reject. And if we make a lower high and can't take out 607, there's going to be a risk of us dipping back down to at least 600. If that doesn't hold, I'm looking for like 598, which is where our 50 EMA should be. Then we'll see if we bounce off this or not, but there might be a slight pullback on the QQQ. Once I show you guys the tech stocks, you'll see why it makes sense to at least think that this is the most likely possibility. So break 607, we're bullish. We should bounce a little bit in the morning, but if we come short of 607, we just touch like 604, 605 and reject, we're looking for that pullback to 600 and 598, and then we'll see if we bounce. That is the most likely possibility. On the IWM, we pumped very nicely, but there is a slight bearish divergence like right over here. So if we end up breaking past this like 247.5 area, we're looking for a bigger breakout. But if we come short, if we hit like 247, we can't like break this high. We could make a lower high and start dipping. We could be retesting this gap fill area around that 244 zone. Then we'll see if we bounce or not. So you want to be very, very careful. As far as ES goes, we have a slight bearish divergence. But we're going to see what happens after we touch like 6750. So if you look at this, there's a slight divergence. We might test 6750. We'll see if we bounce a little bit. But if we lose it, then I do expect 6728 to 6700 flat for a temporary dip. Now notice that as we bounce, if we do get some kind of bounce tomorrow to retest 6775, this would still resemble a left shoulder, head and right shoulder. If we break 6800, I'm bullish, but if we touch like 6775 and come short to kind of reject, then I'm looking for the head and shoulders like pattern. I lean towards this head and shoulders pattern unless we invalidate it by breaking 6800. So I hope that's as clear as possible, right? We have a head and shoulders, which I favor, but if 6800 breaks and I change my mind, we're back to bullish. We might see a small dip before we try to bounce again, so keep that in mind. Just a small pullback, and then we could bounce all over again back up to new all-time highs. When you look at NQ, there's a bearish divergence. Now we need to get back above essentially 25,200 to really continue. What could happen is we could test 25,100, come back down. And if we don't hold above 25,000 for long, then we're looking for a move right back down towards 24,800, if not 24,750. Then we'll see what happens after that. For Bitcoin, we're making higher highs and higher lows. If we end up losing 121,000, if we lose this, we're going to be dipping back down to 120,000. But if we bounce off this, we're looking for 125,000. We're going to see how it goes, but I think 121,700 will likely be tested, but we'll have to see if we bounce off that. We might be dipping a little bit, then we'll see if it ends up bouncing. One concern about this is that we have rejected off 124,000 many times, and we're starting to reject near 125,000, so that could suspect a higher probability of more downside as a result. I think there was good news that came out for Tesla, but also know that this also resembles kind of like a head and shoulders. There's like a left shoulder here, a head and then a right shoulder forming. So we're going to be watching essentially this 430 area of this hold. So we're looking for a bounce to like 440. And then we're going to see what happens after that as we consolidate and start to dip like this. This is what we could be doing on Tesla. Because of some good news that's coming out about a more affordable Model Y and other good pieces of news, I would not be surprised if we actually see a small defensive bounce for like 440 on Tesla. We are kind of due for a bounce after dumping so hard. We also have a wick right here, so look for a small test of 440, maybe the low 440s for some time, but then there is still some risk of downside later on, so keep that in mind. So if we lose 430, we're looking for a dump. But if we break past 445, we're looking for a bigger bounce. I think we test 440 and consolidate on Tesla, but then we could be dipping more later on looking at the current trend. Nvidia is favoring downside a little bit more. We might be retesting 186. We have to hold this. If not, we could be dipping all the way down towards like 183.5. For Appl, we're making higher highs and higher lows. There's a slight bearish divergence, but there's no sign of it stopping. I think we might retest 255, and then we could try to bounce, and then we may continue to push for the 260s. But if 255 fails us, we're looking for 251. I think we're going to be testing 255 for a small dip, and then we'll see if we bounce off that. Most likely we will bounce. Netflix is bearish, lower highs and lower lows. Unless we get back above 1174, we're going to be favoring 1160, then move back down towards the 1140s. MSTR is showing some weakness. We're going to see if 349 holds. If it doesn't, we could be dipping back down towards 340, and we'll see what happens after that. So watch that very closely. For Celsius, we have a bearish divergence. We could be retesting 57.54. Then we'll see if we bounce off that or not. Supermicro may also be dipping back down towards 50, if not, 50.29 and 48 is our supports. I do think 50 is going to be tested, so be prepared for some downside. Palantir dumped quite a bit, but there is a support right here. Resistance becoming support at 172, which does signify an attempt for 178. We're going to likely try to bounce a little bit for 178, then we'll see if it rejects again. But if we lose 172, it's going to be more bearish. I do think there might be a small bounce coming on this, but then we'll see if it rejects. Rivian is also trying to bounce. We did call downside a couple of days ago, which is what happened. But now I think it's going to see some defensive moves by the bulls back up to 13.92 or above. And then we'll see if it rejects off that, but there should be a small bounce coming. SoFi is on a bit of a downtrend. Unless we hold above 26.3, we're going to be favoring 24.85 or below. Then we'll see if it bounces to look for some downside. AMD is favoring 162, and we'll see if we bounce. There's 162.61 and 160 as for supports. Let's look for a small dip, and then we'll see if we bounce. ARM has resistance at 155. We need to hold above that to continue. If not, we're looking for a test of 150, which it will most likely test. It is testing resistance up here. It does like to reject near 155. So look for 150, and we'll see if we bounce. For PayPal, we're trying to push back up towards the 70 area. It does look a bit more bullish to me. As long as we could hold above 69, we're looking for 70, then 71. Coinbase is up here at resistance at 380. If we hold this, we're going to be looking for a push. If not, we're looking for 370. Look for a test of 370, then we'll see if we bounce. Overall, be very, very patient. For Amazon, we're making lower highs here. We need to hold above basically 221.26. If not, we're going to be dipping. I think we're going to test 221, and then we'll see if it rejects and starts dipping back down to 218. Meta is on a bit of a downtrend, rejecting off our 20 EMA. We could retest basically this 720 area. So right over here with this imbalances, I think we might be retesting this. Then we'll see if it rejects. Look for a small bounce on this. Google's looking more bullish. It has an inverse head and shoulders, but it also depends. If it loses 244, that's bearish. But if we could hold above 246, that's a little bit more bullish looking. Then it could be looking for like 248 to 250. This is looking a bit more bullish with the wicks forming here, so it's favoring upside a bit more. So we'll see if it bounces or not. Microsoft is also forming higher lows so far, so this might try to bounce. So long as 515 does not break, we're going to be favoring 520 again, so it looks pretty good to me. Finally, the VIX, we might see a small dip as the market bounces in the morning, but the thing is, it might just be a temporary move down before it starts to push higher, and this might start to be looking for a small breakout from this flag. Could be very, very temporary. Does not mean the market's dumping or crashing. It could just be a temporary move up. The 10 years going up. We're going to see how this is affected by the FOMC minutes. The dollar is already gapping up. Could this be a sign the market's going to start pulling back? Maybe. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a small pop in SPY before potentially seeing some more downside. So plan A is basically like this. We kind of like form a head and shoulders on SPY like this. We pop in the morning tomorrow, then we consolidate and we can't take out this high. In that case, then we could be looking for a rejection move back down to like 667 or 665. Then we'll see if we bounce near like 665, I would think. But plan B is that if we break 672 and hold it tomorrow, then I'm switching to bullish and we could continue to break out. Although it looks less likely, judging by the daily time frame what we're seeing from tech, we'll see just to be safe, but always be prepared for both cases. Although plan A looks more probable, although it's more probable we kind of bounce, then reject and start dipping lower. We'll see what happens going into tomorrow. With that being said, guys, I hope you guys enjoy your guys' weekends. I'll be back once again tomorrow before market open to give you guys more updates. Until then, I wish you all nothing but the best and peace out.